JPMorgan just released a brand new report that, frankly, you really need to know about because it's shaking up how all of us think about retirement planning, whether we're financial advisors or we're do-it-yourselfers. This is changing some things that many of us thought were foundational truths. So let's jump into this report. It's called Three New Spending Surprises: Additional Insights into Retirement Spending Behaviors. Why is spending behavior so important? It's crucial because that feeds into how much money do you need to retire. In fact, it's so important when people would come visit me, potentially wanting to work with me before I retired, and ask about retirement, the first question I would ask is not how much money do you have? That's important, but even more important is what does retirement look like to you? What I was trying to get a sense of retirement spending. So retirement spending is everything. So let's jump in. The article starts off saying, preparing for a financially successful retirement requires careful planning. Completely agree. Knowing what to expect at different stages can help. And most Americans are encouraged to save as much as they can during their working lives. But what happens when they enter a new stage by retiring and their focus shifts from saving to spending? That's why spending's so important. So let's jump into it. The first foundational truth that the retirement planning industry thought they knew, and you've heard me talk about this, is the retirement smile, the famous retirement smile where, early on retirees tend to spend a fair amount of money, then they spend less, and then at the end of life, they end up spending more because of healthcare. But the question is the retirement smile really true? And with a study of over 280,000 Chase clients, this study gives us an insight into it. So here's what they say. They call it a spending curve, and I'm going to share with you a graphic here in a second. They say overall spending does not remain constant. It peaks at midlife and declines with age, but spending categories shift in relative importance over time. So let's talk about what these categories are, how they shift, and whether we see that smile or not. The report goes on to say, adjusting for a retirement spending curve. It's not conventional wisdom, but our JP Morgan's latest research find that spending patterns change significantly with advancing age, and they do not rise uniformly with inflation. And this is the chart that they show. So this is what they're saying is people spending peaks about 45 to 49. And you can see what the categories that people are spending it on. In this group, these are people that had assets of $250,000 to $750,000. Importantly, buried in that footnote at the bottom is this is outside of their home equity. So people with $250,000 to $750,000 outside of their home equity. So you can see 45 to 49, it peaked at almost $90,000. But here's the thing, it continuously goes down with age. It doesn't come back up in old age because of healthcare expenses. Now, healthcare expenses do go up, but you can see the other expenses tend to go down such that the overall spending on things like food and beverage, the other category, I'm just looking at the things that compress. So you can see the purple category there, which is food and beverage, that compresses down. You can see the housing, including mortgage, that goes down and then kind of rises a little bit at the end as well. Charity and gifts actually go up. So you can pause the video and look at any category, but that's the first major finding is maybe we need to rethink this retirement smile when it comes to spending. Again, spending is important because this is going to factor in how much money you need to retire. And as importantly, that then feeds into when do you retire, right? You don't want to have to keep working any longer than you need to. Okay, the next finding here is something that they call a spending surge. And to preface this, I first want to share, it is very normal in a household for one partner, if they're in a partnership, if they're married, for one person to retire a couple years before the other person does, maybe a couple months, maybe a couple years, but that's very normal. And what they found is, on average, post-retirement spending temporarily increases for what they call partially retired households. That's a household where one partner is retired, the other one is not. And they find this, what they call a spending surge, takes place for people with retirement income of less than $150,000. So here's the chart where they show this. The green line are households that are fully retired. If there's a partnership, if there's two of them, both are fully retired. The households that partially retire, these are folks that one person continues to work. And you can see here that there's a surge that takes place uh, during the 12 months before and after that rolling 12-month period before retirement. And this is in this example, this is for households with a pre-retirement income of $50,000 to $90,000. Again, above $150,000, they find it goes down. I'm going to share why they think that surge does not take place for households that are making over $150,000. But first, I just want to talk about it. So it does go up, and then you see it starts to come down over time. In the right-hand side of this chart is 3 years after they start getting retirement income. That would be a pension, that would be Social Security for most of us, things like that. So why does that spending surge? Why is that stronger for people with lower income, households with pre-retirement income of less than $50,000? And they say that, there's things in the budget that before that retirement income, before Social Security kicks in, there were things that that household was sacrificing, things that they wanted to do that they could not afford to do. And when Social Security or other retirement income came in, that was a boosted income, and people were then able to spend more money. Now, the third one is spending volatility. And what they found is spending is more volatile. It depends on what type of person you are. You can see here the different categories. Now, this is by age. So you can see the older people are at the right-hand side of this chart here. But the top categories are the ones that have the volatility. And this chart here is kind of a table that shows you what those are, but there's different types of spenders. Some people are what JPMorgan calls steady eddies, and there's not a lot of volatility, and other people do have volatility. So what do you do if you have that volatility? And whether you do or don't, I should say, how do you plan for the potential of that volatility? You have to plan. And the gold standard is to work with a financial advisor so you know how much you need to retire. I know many of you prefer to do it on your own. If you prefer to do it on your own, the software that I like, don't use Excel or Google Sheets. It takes too much time, too easy to make a mistake. Use software that's designed to help you plan. There's several choices. The software that I like is called Bolden. It used to be called New Retirement. You can see the QR code here on screen. And if you use my code, you'll be supporting the channel. I am an affiliate. I should share that nothing that I'm talking about here is financial advice. But let's go back to that spending volatility here. And you can see at retirement versus 75 to 80 years old. And they have these different categories. So look at the definition. If you're less likely to be a steady eddy, if you're likely to have more volatility, you have to plan for that. And you have to think through that. But you also have to enjoy the journey until it's your time to retire. And that's why I made this video here that talks about 8 things to stop doing in your 50s and 60s in order to enjoy your journey until it's time to retire. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.